Hey there, it's Olivia-Savannah here from Olivia's Catastrophe, and today I wanted to have a bit of a discussion with you in terms of what does it mean to read a book that you don't like and yet you appreciate the context and the discussion and the themes. Do you have to enjoy a book for it to have been worth your time? This discussion really delves into quite a few things. We can talk about DNS here, we can talk about the time you take to read a book, we can talk about what the book is actually about, and we can talk about what you learn when you read. And I just want to focus this a little bit by talking about the book that inspired me to have this discussion, and that is The Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Bronte, which I read in July and I didn't love, but I still very much appreciated and can see myself even possibly rereading in the future, because I do think it's about something so important and was so relevant within its own context and time period, but is still so relevant today. And this is a book where it's all about this woman who appears at this hall and nobody knows why she's living there, and she's got a son and nobody knows her history, but this man decides that he wants to learn about where she came from, why she's there, and who she is. And it's a very feminist book. It's got some very strong values against sexism, against the way that women are treated, and especially treated within relationships. And I thought it was such an important book, but I didn't actually have the best time reading it, but I would still recommend other people read it. And it really made me think about, what do we mean when we recommend books that we don't particularly enjoy? And because we don't enjoy something, does that mean we can't appreciate it? Another reason why I'm thinking about this is because of A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. I read that book and I absolutely hated it. It's a bestseller, lots of people love it. Lots of people love to fight me about the reasons why I hate it. And I was so hesitant to put my negative rant review up on my channel. I don't have many on my channel. I think I've got 3 in total, because I'm here to love on books rather than hate on them. And yet I felt it very important that I put that review up, and ironically it's my most viewed video on my channel and the one where I've had the most hate on it, but also had the most interesting discussions and seen people disagree and agree, and it's just been a wonderful time. And even though I absolutely hated that book and I couldn't stand it, I learned a lot from seeing people's reactions to my reaction to it, and I also learned a lot about what I do and don't want to write with my own books by reading that book. And again, for context, I'm someone who does not DNF very often. I quickly DNF series. So if one sequel in a series doesn't hold up, I'm happy to quit the series completely. But oftentimes I'll push my way through a book and I'll finish it rather than quitting it. Not to say I never DNF, but it is a rare occasion for me. And that is because even when I'm reading books that I don't like, sometimes I'm learning stuff about how not to do things. And I'm coming from this as someone who is a writer and a reader. I do write myself, and I think it's valuable for me to see books that I don't like, because it makes me understand what I don't want to write. But also, when you read a book you don't like and you read it to completion, you really have a good grasp on what books you want to avoid in future and the reasons why you want to avoid them. You think about the reasons why you picked it up in the first place, and you kind of acknowledge where you went wrong in choosing to pick up that book over another one. It's a very powerful tool, and you don't actually have to finish a book to be able to do those things, but I do find it helpful for me, but I'm not saying that's the way that everybody should do things. But back to the main topic. Can we get value from books that we don't enjoy? Are they worth our time? So taking it back to The Tenant of Wildfell Hall, I thought it was a book that I would have rather studied at university than read for pleasure, because I would have had so much fun analysing this to death. There are so many scenes where there are certain moments that I could pick out and see echoed throughout other books. There's a door slam scene where a woman slams a door, and it just, as soon as I read it, I couldn't help thinking of A Doll's House by Henrik Ibsen, which has a very important and relevant door slam in it. And I'm sure people can think of countless other books where women have slammed doors, and it's been such a symbol of power and defiance that it echoes through the ages. And I think it's quite symbolic of women just slamming the door and saying, no, I do not deserve to be treated this way. I do not deserve to be ignored that way. I'm here to make a sound. I'm here for you to feel the impact vibrating as I slam that door. And also, I deserve better. And it's nice to see female characters doing that. And while I did suffer throughout reading this book and I wasn't enjoying it, I did think, we've come such a long way, but there are more door slams that are needed in life. And that, of course, was tied up to some of the news that's happening at the time in terms of America and abortions and women's rights. There's a lot that we can talk about there. But also, after reading this book, I went through and I read the afterword, where it's discussing Anne Bronte's reasons for writing the novel and why it was so revolutionary and why she received so much clapback for writing this book at the time that she did. Even the prologue to this book is Anne writing a letter to all the people who are about to read her book, saying there's reasons why she's wrote it. Women do have these experiences and she's allowed to write about it. And even reading that prologue, it was so powerful and monumental, but I got more enjoyment out of reading the prologue than I did out of reading the whole novel. And that's because the execution failed for me, and it wasn't executed in a way that felt very effective and a way that felt very suspenseful and a good reading experience, and I'm ready to keep turning the pages. Instead, it took me over a month to read this 500-page book, and I took my time, but I do think it was worth every moment of that time, every moment of bringing myself throughout the book. And there are some other books where I can think of the same thing, not where I think it was bad necessarily, but where I took my sweet time. I took my sweet time with reading The Diary of Anne Frank when I was younger. It's been several years since I've read it because I read it at the age that she is in her diary. I was quite young. I think I was 12 to 13, I'm guessing. And it's not one that has plot to it because you're reading her diary. But it's worth reading because of what she goes through and how her story happened. So it's worth reading, you know? You can't question that. You know that's a valuable book. You know that's an important book. It doesn't matter whether you like it or you don't, if you like her writing style or not, that book deserves to be a book. And it's very, very, very important, and it's changed people's lives and it's changing people's mindsets, and it's an incredibly important, relevant book. But are you supposed to enjoy it? No. This can also go a completely different way. I read Me Before You by Jojo Moyes, and unthinkingly I gave it 5 stars when I read it. I was quite young. I read it, done. But then I revisited it for whatever reason, and I thought about the disability representation, and I was like, this is a mess. And I've got a video with my younger sister who is a wheelchair user talking about the ways in which that book is toxic and a mess in representation, but also how it is incredibly well written. So while I enjoyed the reading experience of that book, in terms of context and overall message, I really didn't like it, which is the reverse, and it's so interesting. And then we're going to bring a little life into this, as controversial as it is. I did not like A Little Life at all. I thought it was awful. I thought it was bad. I couldn't even see the representation was bad. I thought the writing was bad. So not even the execution could save that book for me. And yet, having read Me Before You and putting this book in context, I found it very educational and very eye-opening to where we are in terms of disability representation in books written by non-disabled authors, which is basically still nowhere. Still nowhere in comparison to where we were with Me Before You. And yes, we have lots of disabled authors who are writing very good disability stories and books with disabled characters. I still think we as able-bodied authors, that includes me, because I am an able-bodied writer. Maybe I'm not a published author yet, but I do write disabled characters in my books. We need to step it up. We need to do better with representation. And even though I read something that was bad, it gave me context, it gave me information, I learned something from it. And it just really makes me confused in what is the line between enjoyment and learning. And I think that comes down to the fact that a book is so many things. Every book is a baby. Every book is some author's love. As someone who is a writer, I don't have a physical copy of my book, but the day I hold a physical copy of my book in my hands, that's it. That's pure love for me. I've created something about something personal, something that was born in my mind, and it's physical and it's in the real life, and it's in the form of a book. Every book is someone's baby, but also every book is a knowledge. It's information, it's concepts, it's ideas. Whether it's a romance book, it's about the concept of love, the idea that people need to be loved. Whether it's a classic like Crime and Punishment, which is talking about the justice system, whether it's a non-fiction memoir about someone's life, every single book has knowledge in it in some way or another, because nearly every single book is about people. It's about the ways in which we interact, and people are something. If a book is just about objects, there is more to it. There's always knowledge behind a book. But books are also written for entertainment, and everybody's concept of entertainment is different, which is why I can read A Little Life and hate it, and somebody else can read A Little Life and love it, and those things are both okay. I can say a book is problematic and still love it to pieces. Just watch my Read It Backwards series for Twilight. I think those books have problems written all over them, and I unpick that and I talk about that and I discuss it, and at the same time I say, hey, it's okay, I still love the book, and yet I can talk about the problems. So, needless to say, what I'm trying to say here is that entertainment really depends on the person. I personally get a lot of entertainment from Shakespeare. I personally get a lot of entertainment from some of those lengthy classic Russian novels that I read, because I like to unpick and discuss some of the concepts in them. And even though I think that Twilight and Me Before You has its problems, I can still get entertainment from a book. And so I do think there is something to be said about books that you read having entertainment stripped away from them and being left with the bare bones of knowledge and being left with the bare bones of good writing and symbolism, and still be able to appreciate a book for that. And so I do think when we talk about books, there are different ways in which we can talk about them. We can recommend a book and say, I had a really good time with this. We can recommend a book and say, I learned something from it. And I can also recommend a book and say, it has issues, but it's worth reading it for this reason. I want to be able to recommend a book and say, I didn't like it, and I don't think you will like it, but I do think it's something that's worth reading for this reason. And there are big issues with those lists that you see online where it's like 100 books you need to read. And maybe the Tenant of, if I made my own list of 100 books you need to read, I'd put the Tenant of Wildfell Hall in it, because I think it's one that people need to read in terms of learning about women. But just remember that even if the concept is something that people need to read and you don't think there's any enjoyment there, there may be another book that is better for someone that does this same concept but also adds entertainment value to it. The Startup Wife by Tahmima and Anam is another book that I read fairly recently, and it takes some of the concepts of feminism and relationships and sexism that this book handles, and it's put it in a more modern, contemporary read that was funny, that was entertaining, that I had such a good time reading. And therefore, personally, I would recommend this new book, The Startup Wife, over this one. But then if somebody was looking for symbolism, I would give them this. It's really weird how sometimes books have the same concept, but one adds entertainment value and one strips it away. And sometimes I think that's what those big recommendation lists forget. The fact that a book can be entirely relevant and important because of its subject matter, but you can find a book that does the same subject matter in a different way and entertainingly, whereas the other one doesn't have entertainment value at all. And again, entertainment is subjective, so it's very hard to recommend a book to anyone anyway. I think I've talked a bit in circles here, but it's been very good for me to just get my own thought process out in terms of how do we recommend books, how do we talk about books, and how do we balance this cycle that we're all doing in terms of learning from books, recommending books, and studying and analysing them. Even subconsciously we do analyse a book. If I gave you this book to read and you came back to me and you said, I love it, and I said, why? You're immediately starting to analyse your reasons why. Everybody does it. Everybody can think that way. You don't have to have an English literature degree to do so. And so I just thought it would be interesting to start a discussion in the comments about whether or not you have ever recommended a book that you didn't like to somebody else, and what were your reasons for doing so? Was it because there were elements of the story and execution, or what happens, the events that you didn't like but somebody else might like and it's more their trope, we all have our preferences, or if it's because you thought it was a very important book on something that they need to learn more about, and even if you didn't think they would enjoy it 5-star read, they might find it a 3-star read, they'll feel like they've gained value from giving that book time. So curious to hear what other people think about that and the ways in which we read and recommend and learn and entertain ourselves. Okay, please give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, hit the subscribe button if you want to see more, and don't forget to hit that notification bell to be updated every time I have a new video. And you know what they say, onwards and upwards. Excelsior!